Hi, good evening, and apologies for the late start for this meeting, and welcome. My name is Councillor Jacqueline Daly. I'm Chair of this Housing and Homelessness Policy and Accountability Committee. Before we begin, there are some housekeeping points to cover. The first is that there's a small echo. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube, so by taking part, you're consenting to being recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, either continuously or intermittently, I'll adjourn the meeting. We're not expecting any sort of tests, so please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff fire exit, which is behind me to my right. Security officers will direct you to the assembly point in Riverside Gardens. There are tea, coffee, and biscuits available in the staff kitchen next to reception, and there are toilets on my left-hand side. Now, can I please ask officers to introduce themselves before speaking for the first time? And would everyone please speak into the microphones and then turn the microphones off when they are finished? Okay, if we can proceed straight to the agenda. I have no apologies for absence for full members. So do members have any declarations of interest over any of the items today? No, lovely, thank you. The minutes from the last meeting, do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January 2025 as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Lovely, thank you. And are there any matters arising? Great. Well, then I think we can just move straight into our first major item. So this item is housing safety compliance, and we have presenting for us here officers Richard Shui, supported by Richard Buckley, and we have a couple of guests here. Florrie Marn, thank you, who's the chair of Fire, Building Safety and Repair Working Group, and we have James Berry, welcome, Station Commander at Hammersmith Fire Station. Richard, can I pass to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight's meeting is very important about housing safety compliance. Keeping residents safe in their homes is not just our legal duty, but it's the heart of everything what we do. The report sets out our key health and safety areas, including gas, electricity, water, lifts and asbestos and fire, but also category 1 hazards, structural walls and playgrounds. And it's important that, I know this can be a bit sometimes a dry subject matter, but everything what Richard Buckley and his team have done over the last 3 years of getting compliance between 98 and 100% is phenomenal for a local authority to do. And this was done way before I arrived here, and it's great to see that Richard and the team have continued ensuring that this compliance continues to be in that high, what we call high table activity with other local authorities and also registered providers of housing associations. Also, you asked, Chair, for us to look at the Grenfell Inquiry Phase 2 report. It also links about the Building Safety Act, the Fire Safety Act, our fire safety regulations, and also the Social Housing Regulation Act. We also, in the report, talks about our major investments and town safety for all. And with Florrie here, hopefully we can also demonstrate our journey of improvement of communicating with residents, providing transparency about building safety information through the FRAG, ensuring disabled people can evacuate their homes, and also more importantly, we can also help and support residents when issues arise, such as e-bike fires. I'll hand over to Richard, who will give a very quick presentation about what we're doing, and there's a couple of videos to show what we've been doing with the fire service.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Give me time, and fire. So there's definitely an emphasis on the be a bit of emphasis on fire safety in this meeting. Richard touched on in the households, and I think it's important to recognise that we have 17,000 homes that, and families and people that live in our households. 5,000 of those are and 12,000 plus are tenants. So look after temporary accommodation, which is continues to decrease at the moment, and it's just under 1,600 properties which we ensure are safe equally. About the 49 fire buildings that Richard mentioned about under the Building Safety Act from Grenfell. Also, just sort of set out just quickly about our housing compliance strategy. So there's lots of information that we do, but this is all part of a wider strategy to ensure that people are safe. And so it's more than just the buildings. It's about how people get out their buildings, how people feel confident and safe within their own homes, which all of us should do. And that strategy sets out that journey and how we continue that, and we review that on an annual basis. We have as it sets out in the report, we have a ISO 9001 accreditation for a number of our services, and we're expanding that. We also have Blue Sky accreditation for inspecting doors. These are third-party accredited organisations that we have to that inspect us on an annual basis. But also we have independent audits, at least 3 audits a year. So overseeing and double checking what we're saying is the truth, and it's transparent and giving residents confidence. And we welcome that, and we play a big part in that. But also we report monthly. We report to Councillor Rumi, the Cabinet Member, to SLT Assurance of the Chief Executive, and so we're constantly providing information and so that residents have access to that. Richard touched on the other bits that we look for, but there's a little table on there, and you'll see that. Is that coming up on which? Is this on the screen or?
No.
Apologies.
Are we on the wrong slide?
Wrong slide, so it makes no sense to do it.
Computer say no.
Not sure why that's doing that, sorry. I have absolutely no clue.
We're having a few technical issues this evening, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a little bit slow to catch up.
How it feels.
Computer's just not working.
It's frozen.
Yeah, yeah. Right, it's on. Pardon? Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, but it didn't do it. It didn't do anything, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's not.
I think it's just they're not talking to each other.
No, it's that's exactly what's happening. Sorry.
It's not. Sync.
No, let's try one more thing.
And paint a building.
Entire screen. It will see everything.
Right, well, we'll talk from there. No pressure. So the Richard mentioned the Grenfell inquiry, and they concluded the phase 2 report in the inquiry recently, and the key part of the report says that the 72 tragic deaths were avoidable. Of those 72 who died, 18 were children, 15 were disabled. and the majority were from ethnic minorities. And we embraced the report and the findings from that. And there are 58 recommendations that come out of the phase 2 report, and there are, I think there's around 53 in phase 1. And you see it on the slide there, but the focus, if to sort of summarize, is on a sort of, there's a lot of technical stuff there, but it focuses on accountability of officers and contractors and organizations, competence, and then oversight of that, and a lot of it, and it sort of details in the report, talk building. We have 49 at the moment, based at 7 stories and above. Are they going to expand that definition wider? It talks about recognizing formally titles such as the fire engineer and fire risk assessor, which were very lacking in the Grenfell, in the construction there and the delivery of the project. It talks about potential now of licensing contractors to work on higher risk buildings, and also about creating a single government body. So 9 of the recommendations were actually relating to the government, as well as contractors, etc. What we do is we detail in the report what we've done, and but I think it's probably not going to work now. But I might have to sort of, apologies, come out because I can't actually see what of. All right. So when we look at the legislation has changed post Grenfell. We have the Building Safety Act, fire safety regulations, changes to the building regulations. So it's important to remember that regulations are the bare minimum. So it's often looked at historically as, this is where we want to get to. Well, actually, it's the bare minimum, and then what the Hammersmith and Fulham has embraced is working above that and investing more in its residents to ensure that that there's safety. And we can't see the slide very well, but it splits it into 2 areas. One is about sort of the hard physical works that we've done to buildings, and the other bit is about the sort of the soft works we're doing, and working with FRAG and the fire brigade, for example. So just a couple of examples. We've upgraded over 6,000 fire door sets to date, with another 3,000 planned. We've installed 6 new wet risers. We've put sprinklers into over 600 homes already. We're installing another 380 as we speak, and the plans to do more. We've invested in evacuation systems in 9 of our tower blocks, which are, again, is quite unique. It's a stay put philosophy, but it allows the fire brigade to change the fire strategy should they need to. But we've also invested in many other sort of bits in terms of going around to people's homes, expanding the number of fire detection and the range within each person's home, improving things like fuse boxes, lighting, etc. On the softer side, we've been working with Flory and the residents who live in a range of housing types, from very high tower blocks to more traditional housing, and working with the policy and how we sort of reach out to people. I mean, the key thing of the Grenfell inquiry was about that resident engagement. Residents know their homes best, and it's that sort of interaction. There's some unique things that Hammersmith and Fulham has done. We have a Fire Safety Plus visit where we go around and we test white goods, so tumble dryers and fridges, and all that is done proactively and obviously for free, and we do it for leaseholders as well as tenants. The Grenfell Phase 1 recommended the introduction of personal emergency evacuation plans for residents, and at the time, the government didn't adopt that recommendation. That has now been adopted, but that's still sort of a work in process. But nonetheless, in Hammersmith and Fulham, we took the step a long time back to develop those for residents. Their information is stored in the blocks, and it's passed on to the fire brigade, so they have that information when required. And we offer that to everybody, leaseholders and tenants, and we're constantly trying to push that, and we're working with FRAG and to see how we can reach a wider audience. There's a lot more information that we pump out in terms of advice letters, which we send out annually. We have it on our screens, sorry, our lift screens, we send out leaflets and brochures about e-bikes and the risks there, barbecues, etc. Big project that, and maybe I'll let Jim talk about it in a minute, is working with the fire brigade on what's called making every contact count and the training package, and which is rolled out to our staff and to our contractors. So that's sort of an overview of where we've gone way above the minimum requirements in Hammersmith and Fulham to ensure that we keep our residents safe. I'm not sure if I can get this to work here, but I can sort of just about see that. If I can make it a little bit bigger for you, but this is some examples of the works that we've done. So this is like a great pumps for a wet riser in one of our buildings, which is over 50 meters high. It's an example of one of our upgraded fire doors. You'll see just a basic signage. Again, it's improving. So if a firefighter needs to see, which floor they're on when they're coming up, etc., all those things which were highlighted in the Grenfell report, all of these improvements have been made across our stock. And maybe I could supply it later, but there's a link there to make every contact count in the training, which we've made available, and we're actually trialing it, making it available to members of the public. And I'm conscious that this is not likely to work, but I'll give it a shot anyway. Right. So this is just an example of an e-bike. Has a lithium-ion battery, and there's in the report, in the PowerPoint, there's a couple of other links. There's a sort of scientific paper which is open source. If people are more interested, they can read the science behind it, which we can make available after this. And there's also a link about fire brigade advice about these bikes. But I'll just see if I can play this, see if it actually works. And this is sort of see the bike there emitting gas, and then you'll see the explosion. No one's hurt, by the way, during this. This is real footage. And you'll see in the report, it mentions that in 2023, there was 3 fatalities in London as a result of this. The main thing about it is they're exceedingly difficult to put out. It's the fact that it gets to that sort of stage, that ferocity, in a very few seconds, which is what causes the risk to residents should they store them in their homes.
When I started drinking warm water.
So just to go back to what have we done? So as part, again, we've worked with the fire brigade on our in terms of our housing stock. We've put out posters. We've got messages on our lift screens. We have lift lobby screens. We've sent flyers and to all residents' homes. We've also now, following conversations with Richard, we've agreed that we've got posters in all our lifts now banning the use of e-bikes and taking e-scooters in our lifts, because you can imagine the outcome would not be very good if that happened. So we're constantly trying to push and promote that message. I'm conscious presentation hasn't quite gone to plan here, but I don't know if I want to bring in Jim there, if you have any views on the update on from fire brigade's perspective on make every contact count, and also on the lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, so making every...
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Obviously, I'm conscious that we haven't really been doing introductions, so I think it'd be very helpful that we've now heard from, obviously, Richard Buckley, the AD of Building Safety, Assistant Director, but it would be lovely to have an introduction from you so we can make that clear to the committee. Okay. Thank you.
My name is James Berry. I'm Station Commander at Hammersmith Fire Station. Been in post at Hammersmith 3 years, been working in the borough 4 years. I was at Fulham Fire Station before that. So yeah, in that time, built up a fantastic relationship with Richard, with the fire safety team, and also the interlinking teams like safeguarding and adult social care. without them all working, us all talking, it just wouldn't work. So it's been influential for me. So when I first started in the borough, I carried out a review of previous fatal fires, which led to some work that I developed with Kerry Gordon, which was in adult social care, which was basically looking at how we can reduce fire deaths and the common trends that we came across. I kind of linked that in with the Making Every Contact Count package, which you'll be glad to know is being hunted down by fellow boroughs because it is a fantastic piece of work that we developed. And the idea being was, from the reports I've previously done, there was shortfalls, there was learning opportunities to prevent fire deaths. And one of the big ways to do that was to educate not only London Borough, Hammersmith and Fulham staff, but also the subcontractors, because we get a nice foot in the door quite frequently to see what people's living conditions are like. But for example, Richard and subcontractors might not always get that. But if we do get turned down, the other option is their care providers, the electricians, the gas engineers, who will get that chance to go across the threshold, and it may have been 6 months before someone else went in there. So do the people who cross the threshold know what they're looking for? Are they able to mitigate the risk when they're there, or are they able to provide safeguarding for that person so that we can deal with that immediately? And this was all come out of the findings that we've done with adult social care previously. It took a long time to develop. There's obviously a few bits to do when it comes to online training packages, but it is a fantastic tool, probably not being used to the best of its, I really would like to see it in the contract of people coming into the borough to work, people coming to taking out subcontracts to go through that training, and so we can have accountability, should we say, in the borough, that everyone knows that that's the standard that's required, and you've been through that training, a box has been ticked, and I can live at peace knowing that everyone's upskilled. Going forwards, it may need a bit of, obviously, it's probably 2 years since we started that project, so it will need a little bit of a jig around to make it improve it. But core skills of it will definitely develop everyone within the borough. And as I said, I've been approached by numerous colleagues in other boroughs. I've been approached by other councils who are after this piece of work that we've done. That goes to show how important it was. Other than that, other work that I've done with Richard and his teams. So again, being involved with the what Richard referred to as the hard work, the big projects, the evacuation systems. I've been involved with the wet risers that went in. Also been involved, as you referred to there, with the lithium-ion project, lithium-ion battery projects, which, as I said to Councillor Daly earlier, it was a big passion of mine to make Hammersmith and Fulham high-rise buildings the safest ones in London. And Anthony Gushman and Jonathan Stone in the fire safety team, when I mentioned this, were really keen to work with me, and we threw hours and hours of time and lots of money into, well, not I would say too much, but looking at projects to see what we could get off the ground to make these tower blocks safer. Unfortunately, the gig economy and the lithium-ion battery market is moving a lot quicker than the technology to prevent the events happening. So we've struggled a bit there to find commercial projects or equipment that is for sale that would make people safer. For example, to give you an example of that, would be to try and get all the batteries in a tower block charged on the ground floor. Now, that would mean that there's no lithium-ion batteries above the ground floor, and should we have a fire up there, well, it reduces the risk of having a fire up there. Should we have a fire up there, the tenant is then responsible because their charging facility was provided downstairs. So the tower block fire wouldn't happen. It would remain downstairs. It's very hard to do logistically. It's very hard to do. You're talking about sharing electricity. And then we looked at a few other bits, but at the end of the day, we've had to go back to the easiest part for us is to educate people. So we've done 2 events. We've done lithium-ion battery charge safe event on Shepherd's Bush Green, which Richard attended, and we had other members of the council attend as well, just to have a presence and show how keen we are about making sure we're safe in the borough. That talks to gig economy riders outside your McDonald's, your KFCs, your takeaway venues, and talk them through about not charging second-hand batteries, aftermarket batteries, because that's where we're having issues with lithium-ion battery fires. And we also done one at Hammersmith Apollo. Hammersmith Apollo? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just there on the one-way system, targeting the gig economy riders there as well. So we're very proactive. We have great working relationships. I think we're blessed that I've been in post for 3 years. Normally we get moved around every year. So that has been very beneficial. But I would like to just praise the people that I'm working with in the borough, because without them, it would be hard work for me.
Thank you very much, James.
I want to introduce Floyd. I just wanted Floyd just give a couple of minutes on from the resident's perspective.
Richard, you need to have your microphone on if you're going to speak. Florimon is the chair of Fire Building Safety and Repairs Working Group. Really love to hear about how the working group works for the council and kind of some of the things that you've been involved with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Chair.
you.
I'm a long-term resident of Hammersmith and Fulham. I've lived in Hammersmith and Fulham since I was 6 weeks old, and I'm now 68. So I know Hammersmith and Fulham quite well. I'm involved quite a lot with the council at the moment on different sides of the getting the residents involved in working groups, and this is one of the ones that we're at the moment. It's a group that we've got together to get the actual residents have got a voice in something that goes on like this. It's like the old days saying that it's happening with us rather than happening to us. We're having a chance to say about things, getting things changed, what we need to be in place, what we would like to have, especially with the fire and health and safety and the building safety as well. We work very hard with Richard and both Richards, frankly, to be honest. And we do have, I think it's 6 meetings a year where there is, at the moment, there are 8 members of the FROG. We are looking for other people, 9 members, sorry, apologise. There are 9 members of FROG altogether. 8 of those are residents, and residents are tenants, and 1 is a leaseholder. And they're all involved in it, and they speak about what's been going on in their area, all these problems that have been having with fires, with the batteries and all the rest of it. And they've also been quite involved in all the fire doors as well. And when you said what we've actually been involved in, sorry, let's go back to my notes. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place, but didn't really. Okay, so the things that we've been involved in is something like fire and safety in homes information booklet. We were involved in actually bringing that to fruition with the team. We also did the damp and mould leaflet as well that went around all of the areas. We developed a repairs thing that's separate. And understanding, we actually got people talk to us about the sprinkler systems and understanding how that actually stops a fire, because you just think of sprinkler, you don't know what that actually does, and it will got explained to us as well. The same with the fire doors. That was explained to us what the reason for having the fire doors, what that stops happening further down the line. If you've actually got a fire door, gives you a certain amount of time to get out of the building. And also there has been, we've asked for Hammersmith and Fulham to promote more of this thing that we call PEEP. It's actually personal evacuation personal evacuation plan. And what they do is actually go to your home and they look at your area, your home that you're in, to find out if there was a fire, what would happen, what we would need to do to be able to get out of that fire safely, and especially with disabled like myself. They come and check that there is a way that I can get out of the fire, because if I'm stuck in the living room and there's a fire in the kitchen, I've got to go past that fire to get out the front door. So they come and talk to all about that and explain what would be done and everything. But I must admit, we are very pleased that we've actually been involved with the team, because it's we've had our say. We pulled them up on lots of things. So they haven't had an easy ride with us. They've had, when we've asked them to do things, we've given them a tough ride to say, well, this is the information we want to know. Why are we not getting it? Why was it difficult to get hold of? Both Richards have gone away, looked at what was needed, and come back with the information that we needed, and to make us feel safe, to feel that we are being listened to. We're not just being talked at, because that's the worst thing that you can do. I appreciate we're I won't say only tenants, because we're not only tenants, but I appreciate that we're tenants, but we need to be included in what goes on in the area that we live in. Otherwise, why are we here?
Thank you, Florrie. Can I just ask you a question straight out? So one of the real heartbreaks about Grenfell was that the residents could see the situation occurring, and they weren't heard. They were very much not heard. So just directly to you, could that happen here?
It's a bit of a double-edged question, because I can't say 100% no, it could never happen, but I would say 99.9% of the time, no, it wouldn't happen in Hammersmith and Fulham, because not only do we have what we call the FRAG, we also have another working group at Hammersmith, which is called the HRF Forum, and that's a Housing Representative Forum, because we have 26 TRAs connected to Hammersmith and Fulham. So each block of flats most blocks have got a TRA. So if there's any information to be got out there, there's a rep, a chair, whatever you want to call it, that can come to a meeting to find out all the information that's going on, so they can go back to their estates and pass on that information. We started off quite slowly with that, but we've now built up since then. And we started, I think, with about 15 or 20 TRAs, and we've now gone up to nearly 25, 26 people or TRAs that are coming to these meetings to find out all this information. So all I can say is, as far as I personally feel, 99.9% no, it wouldn't happen again.
Thank you, that's reassuring. Richard Sway.
Chair, just to let members know, there's a number of other issues, number of other initiatives which we've undertaken. One is that Jim mentioned about making sure that subcontractors are doing that, make every contact matter counts. That is occurring. So both of our main contractors, Waits, Mears, our DLO, do that training. So that's in the contract, and they are doing, Jim. So that's I just wanted to ensure that. The other thing is that over the last 18 months, we've had a rota where we've had senior officers in the council in housing called Housing Gold, and every week we are on rota. So I've just finished my rota. Richard's just come back from leave, so I'll pass the baton on to him. And basically that means we're on call 24/7. So while we're still doing our day job, we're also dealing with emergencies and making sure that everybody is safe. So that's part of Housing Gold. That Housing Gold links to our silver and bronze, silver and gold emergency plans for the council as well. So it's all interconnected. And the final thing I was just going to say is that we are making sure that building compliance and safety is on our agendas on a weekly basis, daily basis, in all levels of the service as well. And that's why, for instance, when the issue came about with the e-scooters and the e-scooter fires, we worked with our colleagues in legal and the fire service and made sure that, from our point of view, you can't get those bikes into our tenants and leaseholder properties, because they have to go through our threshold and our freehold to get onto it. So anybody who is found to have that and the fire does break out, we are prosecuting, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. James, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Chair, could I just come back in? I'd like to echo the comments that was said there about when you say about how would we respond, or how would the council respond to tenants following Grenfell. Obviously, I was at Grenfell myself for about 15 hours, and the aftermath obviously wasn't the most enjoyable. However, I must say, Anthony Gushman, Jonathan Stone, probably under Richard management, every time we've had a fatal fire in the borough, and I believe there's only 3 since I've been in post, they have turned up pretty much within the hour. So that response time and the support they've given us and the local residents has been fantastic every time. So I'd like to reassure you that.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Richard, sorry, Richard Buckley, I have to use your surnames. Can I just come back to you? In the report that you shared with members, you also talked about construction and refurbishment, and that was a big part of Grenfell, and it's a big part of the aftermath, isn't it? Would you mind just spending just a couple of minutes talking to the safeguards that were in place to make sure that the construction materials and the refurbishments are done to a fire retardant or a fire safe spec, please?
So what I can say is that Richard's team under the capital programme have done a lot of work of taking those flammable items out of the buildings. We're actually down to 3 towers at the minute, and we continue to do that work. It's a lot of work. Actually, there's a lot of local authorities who haven't even started on that, so we are doing that. We also have to provide activities to the Building Safety Act. So at the minute, we've got a number of our properties, of the 49 high rises properties, to the Building Safety to show them that we have that we're compliant with the Building Safety Act to ensure that we actually undertaking our duties correctly, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have questions?
Yes, I did.
Councillor Taylor, please.
I've got a couple of questions. One's very easy. It's just because I'm nosy. How long is this training, the e-learning training that you talked about?
At most an hour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Second question is, and it's not always just e-bikes, and I'm talking on behalf of a lot of the casework I get, especially in council blocks. Where should residents be putting bicycles, whether they're e-bikes or not? Because one estate in particular got letters last week saying you can't put them here, you can't put them there. Where are they supposed to put them?
Councillor Taylor, we are looking at a programme of putting new bike sheds across the borough and across the states. That's something which Councillor May has asked me to look into. So we are providing that activity. That's part of our improvements. So if you can let me know where that
Gibbs Green.
Right. Okay, I will speak to the housing officer to explain what we're doing on top of that as well. So
Yeah,
I will get back.
I'm slightly worried about residents. They say, and I've not seen the letter, that they received a letter sort of telling them off for leaving them on a dead end balcony. So it wasn't as if the balcony went anywhere, but they came to me and said, well, where are we supposed to put bikes? So, and Beaumont Avenue.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Alford?
Yes, I have. Right, regarding e-bikes, do we allow e-bikes in our properties, or you seem to be implying that we did and then we didn't? What is the position on e-bikes?
So from my point of view, as Director of Housing, the answer is no. But if you look at people's leases, previous people's leases, as well as the tenant license, 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't anything called an e-bike. No. So what we've undertaken is what we can say, what we can do and what we can't do. So what we can say is that they're not allowed to pass the door and into our lift area in the lobby because we own that. Yeah. So technically, they're not allowed into their buildings. So that's what we are looking to do. We are then working with our colleagues in legal on how we can actually change that in the legislation into people's leases as well as in their licenses, Councillor Alford.
And what enforcement are you taking to
we are taking enforcement. We have got one particular case where we have taken them to court, and we are waiting to speak. We are in the court process with that individual.
And do you rely on caretakers and housing officers to spot when they're going round if there are e-bikes in?
In that particular case, we did all three. So we just didn't just rely on our caretakers and housing officers. We also, because of the good working relationship which we now have with our TRAs, the TRAs actually informed us about the situation, and we also were able to work with our colleagues in the Letton Police about that. And then we also then worked with adult social care to help the family as well. So it was a proper wraparound service area to make sure that we don't have those particular modes of transport into people's homes.
Going on for the fire safety, which I think is fundamentally important and always have done, is what do you do about smart meters? And you may look at me blankly, but I have to explain that I had a smart meter which burst into flames. I know they are not always safe. What should the council do, particularly in council stock, to check that smart meters are installed properly and that they are not a fire risk?
Well, I've not heard about the smart meter. I mean, what we have done in terms of, and obviously smart meters are, the individual gets their own supply from the provider.
Yes, but it's put in by the supplier.
Put in by the supplier. But what we have done, as I mentioned, as it says in the report, as part of our electrical installation condition report, we go around to every property. We're doing over a 5-year cycle, and as part of that, we've replaced the fuse boxes, upgraded all the wiring in the flats, all the fire detection. We're upgrading it all in the stock. Previous to that, it's obviously many decades. Not that solves the problem, but what it will do is obviously it will trip the system a lot quicker if it detects any rise. But I mean, I've not heard of that. We've never come across a fire of that nature.
I speak personally as having had my house that happened in my house with brand new wiring, and it was the smart meter being incorrectly installed by E.ON, and there was an investigation. I mean, it was proven it wasn't some fantasy. So I'm worried, and I do have concerns because you have rogue people.
Well, you have to remember that within people's homes, you have lithium-ion batteries are in everything that you possess.
I'm not talking about lithium this time.
TVs,
I'm talking about
all hair dryers, etc. There are many fires or electrical fires. People bring in items, so we can't. It can't be a sterile environment.
I didn't suggest that. I'm talking particularly about smart meters, knowing what they can do, and I'm not the only case that it happened in.
Well, thank you for bringing. We'll look into that. I mean, I'm not aware of having it in stock. I'm sure if you've ever.
It's not a trend in the borough. We would come across trends like that. Sorry, yeah, it's not a trend. If we come across trends like that, we'd certainly raise it to fire investigation, a bit like we had with the white goods previous years ago. But with the amount that are manufactured these days and the components that are used, and obviously keeping costs down, we are finding that there's units out there that can have a fault. I don't know about what unit was like, whether it had a lithium-ion battery backup, and that could have been the cause.
No, it was incorrectly wired in, and it shorted and went into flames.
Yeah,
and that was the investigation report.
Yeah, it's hard again for Richard Buckley and his team. It's hard for him to prevent that when it's an external agency coming to supply it and install it.
But if you're talking about having arrangements with contractors, presumably when they're doing blocks, they might be putting smart meters in your blocks when you're doing things.
So smart meters, we have 17,000 households. Each individual household is allowed to get their gas and electric from whoever they choose. I mean, they're all, as James has mentioned. I mean, often you get other items which will be through trading standards, and there'll be a recall. We get recall lists as and part of our checks are going around. Whether it's a faulty tumble dryer or any other item. But if that it sounds like it was the potentially the incompetence in terms of the electrician, etc., and how it's installed as opposed to maybe the product. But if we're aware of that, then we'd obviously we would get a message saying this particular product needs to be recalled, and we'd have to go out and we'd let residents know in the same way we would do if there was a particular brand of washing machine, etc.
Right, and I noticed that because you've got to change from 10 years to 5 years for electricals, your standard isn't up to 100%.
That's correct. Yes, so we took the initiative a number of years ago when it wasn't a legal requirement for council housing to move from the 10-year to the 5-year, and also part of that journey is that we took on board the latest electrical regulations, and that's why we're upgrading all the fuse boxes. So everybody's getting a brand new fuse box as we move from property to property. But we also use that as an opportunity to upgrade, and we're there at the time when we required a minimum number of fire detectors. As we go round to each home, we're also increasing the numbers. So it's it's an ongoing cycle of continuous improvement. Sorry.
What's the current
The current percentage is 97.5%.
And when do you think you're going to get it up to 100%?
We're only at so as with all properties, we're probably at just trying to arrange access to those last ones. So we have 220, maybe just slightly less than that, outstanding properties. So it's a small number. But when we go in, it's not just the matter that we're doing the certificate. Often in PC, it'll just say 100%, or because people have got a certificate. What we do is that we do the works as well that goes with it. So it's not just a sort of, we've checked. We're doing, as we go in, we're putting a new fuse box, etc. So that's why we'll get to 100%. It won't be very long, but we will be ahead of our peers as well.
And on a matter of notice for councillors, if fires happen, it would be helpful if we knew where they'd happened, not just suddenly reading a report that there have been series of fires. I don't know if they've happened in my ward or where they've happened.
I mean, on the fire brigade, the website has reports all the main fires for the whole of London. We do report. We don't give individual addresses because sometimes there's a fatality or something like that. So we have to be a bit careful about how we information. But we investigate. And we do. For example, whether there's a big fire in a tower block, we'll often let local councillors know in sort of real time where we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James, Councillor Alford were asking officers there about lithium-ion batteries in flats. Can I ask you, what would the fire service like to see happen regarding lithium-ion batteries? What would you like to see? What policy would you like to see the council adopt here?
It's a tough one because of, as we touched on earlier, with the contracts with the leases and stuff like that. It's you can't just rip that up and issue them a new one. But I would maybe suggest that any new ones that are produced would refrain from the storage of lithium-ion batteries used for. So, for example, the careful area you've got to have is that there's different methods of transport. You have elderly people, for example, who may need the transport there, or you may have youths who are using them to go about their daily business. So it is hard to differentiate, but you could write that into the contract going forwards. Lithium-ion batteries are not going to go away. It's a spike in. It's a bit of a pandemic for us at the moment, but the bits that have already been done in regards to not being allowed to be taken into a lift, therefore, I'm sure people won't want to carry them up 8 to 10 floors because they are quite heavy. That should deter a few people.
Thank you. Richard Schway.
Chair, the other thing, what we've just been doing is that as of today, we've just started to work with our colleagues in planning. So we're looking at the housing design format about what we can actually do, how that actually would work. And that's another area which I know Richard's team will be looking into, where we can talk about these things. But it goes back to about changing people's culture and people understanding what they can actually do. The moving people into a safe environment. That's why we've put these notices and we've labelled it very clearly about having no e-scooters in our lift lobbies, in our areas, to make sure that they understand that they can't actually bring it into their personal tenant properties or their lease properties in blocks.
Thank you. It kind of occurs to me that we've gone from not that long ago, we were talking about plastic-backed white goods and that being an issue. Now, lithium-ion batteries are the issue. We'll be moving on to something else probably really quite soon. What sort of civic contract could be put in place just to protect residents from whatever is going to be the next lithium-ion battery issue? Totally putting you on the spot here, Richard.
Yeah, I wasn't. I think one thing what we do in this authority is that when new items come to the table, we are taking them very seriously. So, you know, the fire basically occurred, Jim, it was about Stebbing House and Linacre Court where we had that issue that summer last year. We were able to, within 3 months, work with legal, put this information together. I know 3 months sounds a lot, but getting legal to agree to all that, to make sure that we can actually defend our case is quite a phenomenal thing to do. And that's why I was quite pleased when they said that we were able to put that in place, and we did that before Christmas. And we did do that before Christmas because we all know that's when people were thinking about buying e-bikes for family members.
Thank you. Richard Buckley, do you want to add something?
I was just mentioning that Jim said earlier about the advancement of batteries. Now, we have to remember that, you know, mobility scooters, wheelchairs, everything has this. So in the future, the solar panels and the homes, etc., will have them. So, but what so you can buy an expensive bike for 3,000 plus, and they will come with a battery management system. So there's the battery management systems are the clever bits. So from your plug to the battery management system, which reduces, it cuts it out, etc. So there's statistically, because the sheer number of batteries are, they are literally, millions of them made every day. And statistically, there's always going to be an issue. But I think the technology is catching up to a point where, it will become safer. So we have to be a bit cautious about what we ban everything, and then you realise that actually 90% of the property, in your house is made of lithium ion. So what fire engineers are doing at the moment is, they're collectively working is working to make it safer and technology. And that's why the fire brigade give a pragmatic advice about, if you're not going to listen to what you should do, at least put it how you charge it safely in this environment within your home, so that you can get out. So that there's a pragmatic approach to it as well as technology catching up.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sadiq.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the awareness after the Grenfell Towers, and we talk about a lot about the batteries and the physical checks and the education and awareness. Someone mentioned about the tall or medium tall buildings, about 50 buildings within the borough. And what sort of courses, awareness courses, or the physically send the message across, or teach or taught the residents been done so far after the Grenfell Towers? If not, and is there anything scheduled like every year, every month, or every 3 months or 4 months? If not, if there is any physical material or sent by email, by post? If not, what is your suggestions at the moment in this regards? And is there still any concerns? Is the second part, any building is of your concerns or suggestions you want to do? But awareness is very important for the education after the Grenfell.
Yeah, so initially after Grenfell, we published leaflets for people living in high-rise buildings, and there was a huge push that these were put around everywhere. And I know Hammersmith and Fulham, I was here at the time, so leading on that was very important. The problem you're going to have is obviously people move, and people move into tower blocks, people pass away, and people, so there is a change in that. So we do still now carry out what we call 7.2D visits on them tower blocks. So we will go there, we will check the dry riser system, the wet riser system. Obviously, we check it for our use, but at the same time, we can identify if there's any shortcomings with that equipment. The premises information box, your red box, which is outside, which has the PEEPs information, that gets checked by us, as well as obviously Richard's quality assurance team as well. And then we, on the 7.2D visit, we have a tick sheet, which basically my crews have to go through regarding the building, of which part of that is to knock on random doors and ask them if they know what the strategy is for the building. So whether it's stay put or whether it's full evacuation, for example, or you know, if they are a resident who's disabled, do they know what to do? Because obviously the PEEPs, have they declared their PEEPs information? Because without that information, we don't know about them. Another example I can give you is, you know, Richard's, actually Jonathan Stone, fire safety team, he asked me to go one of the blocks and talk him through the fire suppression systems, the sprinklers. One resident was certain that if the fire alarm went off, her flat was going to get flooded, and that's why she didn't want one fitted. So just that bit of engagement with us going to see them, to tell them how the sprinkler system works, enabled them to fit a suppression system into her flat, makes her safer, and so on. Other than that, our resources are limited. You know, as you can imagine, we're going through a tough time at the moment with a budget cut. Not that it will affect the frontline appliances, but obviously there's additional work that we'll be doing in the borough as well. So ours will be media. We've got the screens. Not every borough's got this as well, by the way. We got the screens in Hammersmith, Fulham tower blocks, which are crucial for us to put any messages across. So they were there to start with, giving residents information. Lithium-ion battery fires come along. We transferred the LFB website data straight onto your screens, so that it's there on a rolling screen for your residents to see. And we can do that going forwards with any change of sort of situation. If something did crop up, we can put that onto the screen.
Thank you, Richard.
Chair, just let all committee members know that we also do a joint emergency planning training awareness every quarter. The last 2 quarters, we have been talking about high rises, how we actually work together. So that will be the fire, that will be the police, that will be all. We had roughly 50 odd housing officers, including myself and Richard there. We had public health there, everybody, and the ambulance service, the police. We were all talking about how we actually deal with a situation of a high-rise fire and how we all would work together as a team. And these are the things which we do on a regular basis. So we don't want those things to happen, but you got to plan for the worst, I'm right to say, Jim, to make sure that we do a better job when it does occur.
Thank
Chair,
you.
if I may also just add, because I think, thank you, Councillor, for the question, just to give a bit of a broader sense about the administration, the council, and what has been done since the Grenfell tragedy. And it's obviously a tragedy that no one can ever forget. And obviously, I'm sure we all pass our condolences on to family, friends, and loved ones. What this council recognised at the time, the leader thought that a Fire Safety Plus programme was really essential, because I think that fire really revealed the fact that minimum standards were not enough. So it was a case of putting in place this fire safety programme initiative, which went above and beyond. And there was an investment of more than £20 million at the time in a number of different things that have been described this evening with regards to free fire safety checks on council properties. And obviously that includes high-rise properties, free replacement appliances, new fire doors, and they're free for leaseholders as well. And in addition to that, setting up the resident groups so that residents' views could be heard with regards to any of their concerns or issues that matter to them on fire safety, and then introducing the fire safety booklet that's also been mentioned. I think to the point about that continued learning, I mean, we have the housing newsletter that goes out on a regular basis and provides fire safety guidance. There's information on the website, and then an annual booklet that also goes out to residents to act as a reminder, because, as you mentioned, things continue to evolve, and it's the council's duty, everyone's duty, to make sure that our residents are kept as safe as possible. In addition to that, where there are properties that may, for instance, be getting sprinklers specified, engagement groups that will bring together the residents within that property to inform them about the changes. I know there's a video specifically on sprinklers and that installation process and what that looks like, and then an opportunity to ask any questions to officers and a key contact along the way to make sure that any other questions or concerns are answered. I mean, I think at the heart of this is making sure that residents' needs and voices are heard, and we're making sure that they're kept safe with regular, effective communications that respond to their needs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everyone. It's only just the comments and suggestion. It could be the regular surgeries with the housing associations or with the resident associations, could be the regular surgery, could be the one way of regularly continuous teaching. It's just my comments, if it's possible. It's a free, there's no budget needed.
Thank you. So if I can just underline where we've got to with that particular piece, and thank officers for your reports, and thank you, Florrie and James, for coming in and speaking to that. Really appreciate it. I think that we would, well, members would very much like some kind of clear communication to residents about bicycles, scooters, and where they can go and what can happen there. The surgeries idea, if we could take that forward as a recommendation. And I would really appreciate it if we could take forward a recommendation around a kind of a civic contract within the leases. So we don't end up in a situation where we have leases that are already out of date. So it's something in there about a civic contract, which is when an issue or a risk becomes apparent, that part of that contract, part of that lease contract requires residents to mitigate against it, or to work with the council to mitigate against it. Yeah, Florrie, please. Yes, do.
Well, maybe when you get the new leases going into somebody moving into a property, if there could be maybe a little caveat at the end of it saying any sort of like big issues that arise, there is possibility that certain parts of your contract or lease or whatever you want to call it could possibly be changed. So people would understand that their contract that they're given is the correct one, but if something like the lithium batteries and everything like that, something major happens, there is a chance that your contracts will be changed.
Yes, thank you. It would be wonderful to work with the fire, building safety and repairs working group on what that might look like. Thank you very much. Should we take a couple of minutes while we just change and we've got some more guests. Richard, Florrie, James, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your great work. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you very much. Well, so our next report is hidden homelessness. We have Claire Dorning presenting here, supported by Richard Shway, Director of Housing, Claire Dorning, Head of Homelessness Prevention and Assessment. And thank you so much to Dr. Nicola Lang, Director of Public Health, for coming along, and our guest, Michael Angus, who's the Director of Barons Court Project. Can I, Claire, perhaps I could pass to you and just ask you to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Councillor. So Claire Dorning, Head of Homelessness Prevention and Assessment. So this report provides an overview of hidden homelessness and some local data which gives an insight into the level of hidden homelessness in Hammersmith and Fulham. Hidden homelessness refers to individuals who are homeless but not visible, and so they're not recorded in official statistics. And quite often types of hidden homelessness are referred to as sort of sofa surfing, people living with friends and relatives, often in overcrowded conditions or staying in insecure accommodation. Because it's not a definition, there isn't really an exact data set, but the research which we've looked at and which is available, for example, from the Greater London Authority, estimates that there could be as many as 12,500 hidden homeless people in London each night. Alongside the types of homelessness captured by statutory and rough sleeping statistics, there are other forms of homelessness that are less well evidenced and understood. So what I've done in this report is to look at the types of households that in the research have been described as being among the hidden homeless, and then looked at local data to see to what extent those populations appear in our local homelessness residents. So effectively, so it's just sort of moving on, because the main populations or the main types of homelessness are really around sofa surfing, we've turned to those individuals, single people who've approached the council for advice and assistance because of their housing circumstances, where they are living with family or friends that are no longer willing to accommodate them. And looked at what our local data sort of tells us about that population. And we can see that effectively, I mean, about a quarter of homelessness approaches from single people last year were from that type of scenario, were from family friends. And of those, around a quarter are 16 to 24-year-olds, so they're younger. And again, the research data suggests that women and young people are usually disproportionately represented among the hidden homeless. In terms of rough sleeping doesn't appear to be a very good indicator in terms of hidden homeless locally when you look at the population, because rough sleepers are predominantly older single people. And if you look at what caused the homelessness, what was their last settled accommodation before rough sleeping, it's really sort of leaving nass accommodation or relationship breakdowns. It's not the types of homelessness that are usually reported or have been reported in the hidden homelessness research. So I hope that gives you a feel for what hidden homelessness kind of might look like here in the borough.
Thank you very much, Claire. I know it was quite a big call to ask you to come back with a report on something that isn't necessarily measured and isn't really managed for that reason. Michael Angus, can I ask you to give us, if you can, a perspective from people with the lived experience of this?
Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I'm going to give you 5 short case studies of all people that we're currently working with who are hidden homeless. Just to note, these are their versions of their story. Jay is male, Iranian origin, 45 to 55 years old. He came here as a refugee and spent 8 years living in a hostel. He was offered a privately rented studio flat, but declined the offer due to the poor condition of the property. It was dirty, the shower didn't work properly, there was no washing machine. As a result of that offer, Jay was evicted from the hostel. He was told to return the following week to collect his belongings. However, when he went back, all of his items had been thrown away, including his personal documents, his ID, and his family photographs. Subsequently, his bank letters were sent back to the bank and his account was frozen as he was no longer registered at that address. His account remains frozen to this day as he has not been able to obtain a new ID. A solicitor has been helping him to apply for indefinite leave to remain, but Jay has lost contact with them and doesn't know how to get a new ID. He's currently on universal credit, receiving payments through a friend's account. He has spent some time sleeping rough, but he now currently resides in a garage where he's been sleeping for over a year. A is a male Albanian, between 50 and 55 years old. A has been accommodated in the past, but left both properties due to them being unsuitable for living. The first, there were issues with mould, no heating or hot water through the winter. He was working as a steel fixer, but couldn't take a shower when returning from home. Due to the nature of his job, he often came back dirty, covered in cement, and found the living situation intolerable. He abandoned the property and became homeless, spent 13 months sleeping on night buses. He would take the longest available route of journeys of around 1.5 hours, and sometimes the drivers would allow him to stay on the return trip for free, so he could grab about 3 hours sleep. Again, in the second property, there was no hot water, the boiler was broken, no heating, and there was a flatmate who would scream and threatened him with a knife. Fearing for his safety, he abandoned that property too. No longer sleeps on buses, but has chosen not to engage with the outreach team, saying, "I don't bother anymore," as he believes they won't help him. Jay is male, Irish, 35 to 45 years old. He returned to the UK after living and working abroad. He was planning to stay just a week or two, but has faced difficulties financially due to being exploited in his previous work and not paid his wages. His life feels like it is in limbo, those are his words. He's currently doing some training to be able to get a job here, but the DWP wouldn't cover the costs of the CSCS course until he'd been in receipt of benefits for 6 weeks. He's finally got the universal credit payment. He couch surfs with friends, he's squatted a bit, and he's slept on the train and buses too. He's never slept rough before due to being employed all his life, but he's currently worried that he may have to at some point. S is a female Egyptian between 45 to 50, Egyptian origin of 45 to 55 years old. She was staying in the winter night shelter from November to April, but now they've closed, so she stays in the library until it closes, then goes to the coach station and will sleep at the hospital until they tell her to leave in the morning in order to avoid rough sleeping. She's in receipt of universal credit and awaiting a PIP decision. She has a multitude of physical health conditions. Her barrier to housing is that she wants a property that is self-contained, and all the offers that have been made to her have a shared kitchen, often with men in the property, which she's not particularly keen on living in. And then finally, M is a male Iranian, again 40 to 50 years old. He's been squatting for nearly 2 years after the hostel he was in closed down, and he was only offered out of London options. This and a few other situations have created a sense of distrust, and he refuses to work with the outreach team and other services. He's not able to apply for private rented or council support due to his ID being stolen, and struggles with consistent engagement. He also does some precarious cash in hand work and has several mental health conditions. I think in terms of those case studies, what you will notice is all of those people are not of UK origin. That's striking. Perhaps, and in 30 years of working in this sector, sometimes we struggle with people who've come from abroad having higher expectations of what they will get in terms of accommodation and housing, and being a bit less realistic. But in some ways, some of those people are actually being more resourceful than some of the people that are sleeping on the streets, having found other alternatives. I think to note that it doesn't take much for people to feel that the help available isn't worth it, and trust to be broken. And that's usually because of some form of mental health condition or issue that relates to the lack of trust. Interestingly, there was no young people in the case studies that I've given you. That might be because there's quite good provision, I think, in the borough through Centrepoint and others, or it might be because younger people who may be sofa surfing might be in college or EET during the day and therefore not accessing Barron's Court project. We're currently working with about 25 guests who would be classed as hidden homeless, and that's, you know, putting extra pressure on Barron's Court project as rough sleeping sadly continues to rise. Just in terms of some numbers for you, Barron's Court project 2017-18 served around 400 guests and had about 8,500 attendances. Last year it was about 900 guests with 14,000 attendances at the project. We've also worked a lot with the asylum seeker team, and many of those would spend time and be classed as hidden homeless, often through the communities that they come from. And finally, I just want to say that most people experiencing homelessness, whether hidden homelessness or rough sleeping, hide for safety. They don't want to be defined by it. They want to hide because of self-preservation. Interestingly, though, yet the greatest thing that people say is the hardest thing that people say about being homeless is that they feel invisible. I'm proud that Barron's Court project sees them as they are and welcomes them.
Thank you very much for that account, Michael. Very sobering, very powerful. One of the unifiers in what you were telling us there was something around the quality of accommodation that's available to single people, possibly with low incomes. Richard Choi, can I ask you to speak a little bit about what is available for people who have low incomes who are single in our borough, and the kind of the quality of some of that accommodation, please?
Yes, Chair, I will do. I think, just to reiterate, I think we would like to have a discussion outside this room to see how we can help those five caseworkers. Just want to say that. One thing what Claire has also got responsibility is the refugee, the vulnerable communities team as well. We brought it together because actually we were finding what you've just said is something where we need to be working a lot more together rather than silo driven. So that will allow us to see what we can actually do to help those non-English communities who've come from the asylum seeking background. And there is funding where we could actually utilize to help. We need to understand what the issues are for those 5 cases. So that's something else which is what we got. Currently though, we have got some a single pot of funding which has come through from the government. It's a one-off grant allocation of 65,000 for spending June this year to help single people at risk of homelessness and rough sleeping into private rented accommodation, and that will also include hidden homelessness, and that provides the opportunity to offer direct financial support, and it assists with upfront costs for securing a private rented tenancy for this year. In addition, over the last couple of months, the Housing Services has also taken responsibility for private sector rental services as well, and that's another area to make sure that we will tackle rogue landlords who are, let's say, not undertaking their duties as a landlord, and we will ensure that from a regulatory point of view and enforcement point of view, I personally want to make sure that those things are a thing of the past. Now, I know that it's going to be hard to build trust with residents in homelessness, but hopefully they can see the work, what we've done previously with our tenants and our leaseholders about working together and putting residents at the heart of everything, that will change, and those people will feel that they can actually come and talk to us, and we can make a difference.
Thank you, Richard. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there isn't a statutory duty to tackle hidden homelessness, and I guess this is why it's so much harder to find. But it's clearly, we're hearing from Michael that it can resolve in rough sleeping, and areas where we do end up with a statutory duty. So there's definitely something in looking at how we can interrupt the journey to stop that kind of cascade happening, where just then the crisis and the need just escalates, and looking at those opportunities to interrupt.
Yes, Chair, and I think I'm pleased that you've said that, because I know that when we've had conversations, I've said that, and you've looked at me quite rightly and said, Richard, you need to think outside the box. So hopefully this report has helped us to be thinking a bit more outside the box and looking at co-production as what the council wants us to do, and see how we can actually help these vulnerable adults and see what we can actually do. I think the other thing, working with public health, there's other opportunities which we can actually do and help and support on the mental health. Nikki, I think we can do that. And I think the final thing is about, we want to change that philosophy of where people come into our front door at 145 King Street and just say, no, we've got to do something better, and look at how we can actually look at wraparound care. Now, that doesn't mean that housing leads it always, but work together with colleagues across the council, how we can make a difference, especially when budgets are so tight. We need to be thinking in a different mindset going forwards.
Thank you. Claire, would you like to add something?
Yes, it was just picking up your point about that wraparound care. I mean, it's often those non-statutory kind of support type services, which are the services that are really difficult to maintain when you have very tight budgets. One of the services that we had funded through our Rough Sleeper programme up until the start of this financial year was a floating support service, but our allocation, our grant allocation for this year, because of costs, didn't stretch far enough, and that was a service that we had to end. And I think that's something that perhaps Nikki and I will take away together, because we have got this one-off opportunity to actually assist people into accommodation, but listening to sort of Michael this evening, it's more than that that's actually needed. And so that's certainly sort of something that we'll be taking away and talking to our partners about.
Thank you. Dr. Lang.
Hi, Nikki Lang, Director of Public Health, Hammersmith and Fulham. Yeah, really moving case studies there, Michael, and you've given us lots of food for thought. We've had no recourse to public fund cases before. I'm just thinking of actions we will take. We have a really thriving Iranian association in the borough, which we can link case 1 and case 5 with. As Claire says, we have a rough sleeper mental health team called RAMP. So I'll contact Dr. Merritt tomorrow. And then thinking about the religions of all our NRPF clients, we have a really good faith forum. So we'll appropriately culturally match those folks. And for case number 4, we have Egyptian House. We've had NRPF cases before, and we've actually won. So I think we'll strengthen the ties with people in the voluntary and community sector, and also with Hammersmith and Fulham Law Centre, who sometimes support our folks. But yeah, and the other thing that we're working on with families in temporary accommodation is jobs. So we'll see if we can link you in with Ollie Rahman about job support for folks in Barron's Court. And what was the other thing? Yes, we're putting more funding into Claire's team, 1.5 posts for homelessness prevention to match the money that she's mentioned, just because Claire and I work really closely together, and I think at the prevention end will be really interesting. So we'll put that in.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lang, can I also ask you, back in November, we had a really substantial piece, and Michael supported us with that one as well, thank you, on rough sleeping in the borough. And one of the areas that we were discussing at the end of that meeting was this issue, and it happens very much with hidden homelessness as well. Michael spoke to this, that people can very often run out of sofas to surf on, and they have that first night out. And for young people and for women in particular, it's incredibly dangerous. Is there an opportunity for a policy to be looked into, to be investigated around giving people a safe place to wait before, you know, we can get kind of the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. pickup services to them? Is it kind of possible to look at some of those safe spaces for people to go, so that they're not, you know, some of those examples that you gave, just sleeping in hospitals and staying on buses and...
Yeah, Councillor Daly, I think we'll take that away and work with housing colleagues. We work really closely with accident and emergency as well. So with Pete Greengross as a consultant there, A&E is always a free, warm place where they can provide tea and a sandwich. And he works with Transport for London as well, trying to keep stations open so that between stations and accident and emergency, as you said, people can just sit somewhere and be warm. But we'll have a chat about that with Claire and Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, members, I realise that this isn't a scrutiny item at all. This is much less about accountability and much more about looking at the policy. It's really heartening that there is a kind of a new fund that can be spent in this area. And I'd kind of ask members if there's any sort of questions or any areas that they'd like to investigate with officers now that might lead into some thoughts and some recommendations that this, I mean, we know an awful lot about housing and homelessness in this borough. Anything that we can add?
Yes, I've got a question.
Councillor Alford, please do.
I'm talking about the younger people. You talked about the older ones. Now, what you were, if I could just take up what you were saying that you think that the very younger ones are more at college and things when they're doing their sofa surfing and things. Now, what input or what relationship do we have with, shall we say, the FE colleges and those sort of things to direct people who might be sofa surfing, who are then going to go and not be able to sofa surf because they've run out, into the routes of who they should contact to get advice about where they should go next. So in order to prevent any form of rough sleeping, what proactive work are you going to do, for instance, with FE colleges and that sort of thing? And indeed family services, if families are breaking down or there's a clash, so people are actually directed routes where they can go before it goes down the serious route.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Alford. I'll take that away and have a chat with Peter Haylock, who's the Director of Education, and he'll have oversight. During COVID, we have really good relationships with West London College. I'll try and think of the other ones, but that's the only one that springs to mind.
Councillor Alford, just to add that, we do a lot of work with the young people who we look after, and we do have a working relationship with Children's Services where we are giving properties, and those properties are not what we would do. So as a corporate parent, we want to ensure that they have their first property, and what we do is that we look at white goods, we carpet it, we make sure that they have all the relevant places.
I know that you do that, but I'm really thinking of the people who are, in a sense, slipping through the net. They're not our children in care that we've got a responsibility for. They are people who, for whatever reason, maybe they've actually moved from a different town or something to study, and then it all goes very pear-shaped, and they're ending up sofa surfing.
Yeah.
And they don't have a way, they're not signposted to a way forward.
I think that's really helpful, Councillor, and I think those conversations will be really important to have with the Director of Education you've mentioned, and continued conversation with other colleges and institutions around what support can be provided, because no doubt there will also be stigmas attached there. We also need to think about non-UK nationals who are attending colleges, university, who may not want to flag these issues too. So yeah, thank you. It's helpful.
Thank you very much. Councillor Siddique.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about more, what are the available forums or options to report the hidden homelessness, so we can get the more precise number or, I mean, figures in future. And then obviously some of the borough, out of the 200 boroughs in the country, they do have a space and available accommodation where they can be referred from out of the London. And like he gives the, I mean, like 5 refugees cases, they obviously, they may not want to live in London. They're happy to live anywhere else in the borough, can be referred. If we have the right number or the forums, how they can report, I mean, give the available options. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we don't, when, one of the things one of the advantages of private rented accommodation is mobility, you know, and we will talk to people, we'll offer advice and information about, you know, where you can look for private rented accommodation in other boroughs, you know, in any part of the country. And certainly outside London is more affordable. So we do encourage people to think about whether or not they, you know, they could be more mobile and more flexible with location and where they may be, you know, happy to live. So, I mean, that's certainly something that we would do, you know, for anybody sort of approaching us, you know, making sure that people understand that just because they've come to Hammersmith and Fulham Council for advice and assistance doesn't limit them to, you know, staying in the borough. And certainly with this funding that we have, we would be looking, it wouldn't be restricting people to just securing accommodation in borough, you know, quite the opposite, because it's much more important that we support people into affordable accommodation. But there aren't really projects that you can refer to per se, you know, they're not sort of, you know, services that are in place in other boroughs that we can refer into. But certainly we can support people in looking at options outside sort of London and in other boroughs.
I think just to add, the other aspect is that what we would like to do and what we will continue to do is share the good practice, what we're trying to do here, and let the government, through our contacts through the Ministry of Housing and local government and communities, to explain what we are doing. So we have a regular meeting with our homelessness civil servant, shall we say, who talks to us about what we're doing, what actions we're doing, and how we're moving this forwards. And we have explained this is something which we're looking at. Hopefully, this is a pilot that will be shared, and that good practice will be actually given the opportunities for other local authorities to do. And that way, hopefully that one-off funding could be more funding through, but we don't know, Councillor. The aim of it is that if we can demonstrate all the great work, what we're doing, and activities, we can then actually get more funding through government on this matter.
If I can slightly rephrase the question, what are the available forums or options for the residents to give the information, like this person is a hidden homelessness, is living last 10 days, 20 days, or last 1 month? They can inform the council, then we'll have more precise data.
Like along the, if you can measure it, you can, you know, you can make changes, right? So how can we improve how we're measuring it? Can we ask residents to self-report? Can we, looking for ideas?
I was just going to say, sorry, if I may, Chair. So, hello.
Please do.
Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness here. I think to Michael, your point with regards to the stigma attached and how it's really challenging for individuals to present and even share that they're undergoing this situation, that they're going through this, and that they do need that support. It's sort of reliant on individuals willing to provide that information, to speak up, to speak out, and I completely understand and respect why it's hard to do so. Even to a friend who then may well then make that referral or speak up on their behalf to the council. It's such a challenging area to grapple with and gather that data that we can only do, well, I suppose the council can only do what it can do with the information that's presented to it, and then use that as a basis to sort of help support those individuals and perhaps widen that lens with greater awareness, with collaboration with various charities, other organisations, other services who might be providing that support. So I completely respect the question, Chair, Councillor Siddiqui, with regards to the data you can gather and using that data to measure the difference that you can make, and whether you then need to increase funding to tackle the issue. But it's really challenging, and I think it's not just a struggle for this local authority; it is a struggle for other local authorities. I suppose what we've spoken about this evening, or what officers and what Michael's been speaking about this evening, has been talking about the work to tackle hidden homelessness. So whether that is working collaboration, whether that is early intervention, whether that is signposting, but also, I mean, we touched briefly on the private rented sector and I suppose the standards of accommodation that is provided, and that was really coming through strongly in those cases that you were sharing. And I think that is another area that needs to be looked at. And obviously, this committee has looked at a policy statement which was focusing on the private rented sector and how we could improve standards to make sure that homes are decent, homes are safe, and the Renters Reform Act will do some of that to make sure that repairs are tackled in a timely way and that provision is better for the people who are renting there. I mean, there's much more that we can do, but I think there are so many different examples and case studies and stories that indicate what needs to be done and what needs to be done in partnership to really address hidden homelessness. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Umeh. You kind of lead me to a slightly parallel area, which is really, I mean, guardianships have popped up all over London. If a place isn't becoming an Airbnb, it's becoming a guardianship, which is really just a way of making a profit out of squatting, in my humble opinion. There are service accommodations in some areas in London where young people in particular can find higher quality, low cost accommodation. We don't have any in the borough. I'm wondering if that might be an area that we could investigate. We've got a lot of office space, and some office space that is unused, and the kind of the new powers to change purpose of buildings might be an area, and I don't think it's ever been done. But is it something that could come under a social housing remit, looking at that more temporary?
I think that's a lot of questions, Chair. I think what we would like to look at, we can take them away, we can explore it. I think what the purpose of being this is our second year being a regulatory service. We've got to ensure that we protect our tenants and leaseholders, what we've got in our current stock, and make sure that I do like what we talked about earlier about being compliant and keeping everybody safe. So when we look at properties, when I did a similar project from an office block into, let's say, into small accommodation, you've got to make sure that you do it properly. There was a case very recently in Barking where people had put people into old office accommodation, made them into a accommodation for homes, and unfortunately that caught on fire, and it was more by luck than anything else that nobody died, because the escape route wasn't done properly. And we need to make sure that's something which we need to address through our colleagues, as I mentioned before, through our new housing design approach in our colleagues in planning, which we just started that conversations where we might be able to look at these things as well. So that's something which is more long-term, which we can look into. That's not a short-term fix. So I think I'm happy to take those things away and work with other parts of the council to be the ambassador to move these things forwards. But we do need other parts of the council services to take ownership to help us to move that forwards. Housing can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. It does very much feel like a public-private collaboration sort of area, really. Michael, what policy changes or what policies do you think might be able to improve the situation around hidden homelessness?
I'm not sure I've got the answers to that. I think in, I think there's a few things, whether it's about hidden homeless or just general homelessness. The things that come to mind are when people come to us, they're often very desperate. And I think back to a young person who came to us last year who had become homeless because his dad kept beating him up. Was 17 at the time, ended up sleeping rough and then sleeping in a second-hand car. He worked with us for a while, and we got, with our support, he got into university. He's done his degree, he's come out, he's got a good degree. He was placed back in a hostel because he couldn't go home, and he managed to stay in Horse for the time he was in university. His weekly rent is £425. He cannot afford to work. So he's stuck in a system that doesn't work. And he doesn't want to be unemployed. He wants to work, and he's got a degree and he's studied hard for that. But he cannot get a job because he cannot afford the rent of the hostel. And he said, why did I do it? What was the point? So it's the entire system is broken. None of it works. And the threshold to get the mental health support and social services support has risen and risen and risen. And the services that people need are not there anymore. So it feels, I've been working in the sector for 30 years, I'm giving my age away now, but it's it just feels it's more desperate than ever. And the numbers are rising. We are not able to always support the number of people that we need to or should be able to. And particularly in the autumn and winter of 23, we were at a point where we thought we might have to issue people a 1-hour slot, which is no good if you're on the streets in the cold and the rain of winter and have nowhere else to go, to be told you may only be able to come for an hour, but to manage the numbers. So yeah, I haven't got the answers, I don't think, for the policy change, but I think I would like to just say, in that 30 years of working in this sector, I think Hammersmith and Fulham is probably one of the best councils that I've worked with. You do support us, and I know that if we had suggestions, we could come to you, you would listen. So yeah, I hope it didn't come across as too much of a rant, because it wasn't meant to be.
No, thank you. I mean, the whole point of asking for this report is to kind of look at some real, just kind of to look at what the need is within our borough. Really sort of drawn that it's a lot of young people and a lot of women, and as well as kind of asylum seekers. These are some really vulnerable residents. I really appreciate members and officers and guests kind of helping sort of investigate that. Can I ask that we could possibly bring something back? We've got the £65,000. We've got like a few recommendations and a few areas that we've sort of looked at, and it might be nice to investigate. I think it would be really heartening to bring it back and just to have a report on how the money is being spent and what measurements we put in place for that. What objectives we're trying to hit with that, and I'd just like to, for that to be a piece that comes back. And what sort of when does the money need to be spent by? You said it's for this year.
Yeah, it's this year, and it's not unconditional. It's got conditions attached to it, so it's ring fenced, and it's to prevent people at risk of street homelessness. Which is exactly this population. If they weren't sofa surfing, they could as easily be on the street. So, which is why I feel that we can, it is our opportunity to really target a population that traditionally isn't really easy to give financial assistance to. So yeah, it's this financial year.
Thank you very much. It'd be fantastic to come back this financial year.
Chair, we will do, and we also will explore the recommendations and the suggestions what the committee has asked us to look at as well.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. And so can I just ask if committee members are happy to just note the reports? The dates of future meetings, we've got the next meeting is the 22nd of July, the 5th of November, the 3rd of February, and then the 20th of April next year. Can I ask members, are there any items that they'd really like to see on the forward plan? Okay, so my suggestions are, I think it would be really interesting to if we did youth today, to look at the other end of the spectrum and look at sheltered housing in the borough. I think that we are probably due a return back on and an update on some of the repairs areas. I think members would be really keen to see something around capital programming and regeneration in the borough. I'm also minded to bring something around tenant satisfaction measures and perception, some of the kind of the surveys and some reports on that. I will work with the committee coordinator to get an agenda for the next meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who's attended. Thank you for everybody who's been watching online.